y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be starting into another 10,000 pages in 10 days challenge. Alright, so before I get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below and tell me in the comments, how many books did you read in May? Alright, so this is my second time trying to do one of these. I did a 10K in 10 days challenge. I think it was inspired by Sandra at, I'm not going to remember her username, but I'll put a link to her video in the description down below where the inspiration from this came from. I tried this out with Jan Agaton's Lair last year. Did not succeed. I was just shy of 6,000 pages. I have a lot going on. I've got a lot of plans coming up this summer, and I thought this would be a great idea for me to try and do again in order to get a lot of reading done, to get some video plans set up, but also just because it's fun. I want to do better. I am going to do my freaking best to hit 10,000 pages. Do I actually think that'll happen? I have no idea, but I want to top 6,000 pages at the very least. Like, that's my bare minimum I want to do. If I can hit 10,000, that's the goal, people. I did, however, realize last night that I chose a terrible week to start this because I have a book club on Wednesday, I have a work event on Thursday, and my niece's birthday party on Saturday. So it's a busier week than normal for me in my everyday life. But with that being said, I have already started into a few books. So I'm currently in the middle of reading an arc of A Touch of Steel by 𝗖cie Maxwell, and I did up my alarm this morning by 15 minutes to get an additional 15 minutes read. I am actually starting to enjoy this. Prior to this morning, I was feeling very ambivalent about this book so far. Like, I was reading it, but I wasn't very hooked in. Now I'm at about 29% in, and we've seen the hero and heroine actually interacting, and now I'm engaged. Now I'm invested. I am excited to keep reading this. Along with that, though, I am also listening to the audiobook of Wrong Place, Wrong Time by 𝗖cie McAllister because Galactathon is currently ongoing. So I'm doing that for that readathon as well. And then I have a few other current reads that I'm in the middle of that I need to finish too, which we'll see. One of those is Dracula. I'm doing a buddy read, I guess I would say, of that book throughout the year. The book is broken down into like journal entries or letters, and that's how I'm doing that. So I think currently like 2 days behind, so I need to catch up on that. I'm probably going to do that on my lunch break. And then I'm also in the middle of reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and unfortunately I'm feeling very meh on that as well, but I own it. I already have started annotating it. I just need to kind of finish it out at this point. That's assuming A Touch of Steel is not calling to me, because like I said, now that the two main characters have interacted, I'm more interested, I'm more invested, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm really intrigued. Hello, my friends. So I've just done a lot of filming, but I've actually gotten a fair amount of reading done today. So I'm currently at, I want to say like 480-ish pages for the day. That might be an overestimation. And I'm also going to say right here, right now, I probably am not going to be filming multiple updates in a single day for this entire video, but we're starting out. I figured let's keep it rolling while I have the energy. So starting at the top, the first book I finished for this video was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by 𝗖cie McAllister. I read this one for my Galactathon readathon, and I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, I binged through majority of it, obviously, because I'm filming this, but like, I think I probably would have binged through it anyway, even if I wasn't, because I just was that engrossed in the story. It was really good. It was one of those where I finished the audiobook and it was like, what do I do now? Because that was so good. Where do I go from here? I don't know exactly how many pages I have read so far into A Touch of Steel by 𝗖cie Maxwell, but I have read some more of that also. And then I did read my pages of Dracula for the last 2 days to catch up, as well as today's, and that only totaled to 9 pages. And now actually there's about a 10-day jump. So I won't be reading any more of this until nearly the end of this video. After finishing Wrong Place, Wrong Time, I wasn't really sure what audiobook I wanted to pick up next because I was really hoping that I would have finished one of the 2 romance books I was already in the middle of by this point, because the next book I had up was The Folklore of Forever by Sarah Hogle, and if I had started that, that would be the 3rd romance book I'm currently in the middle of, and I didn't want to do that. So instead, I decided to officially bite the bullet and utilize my Audible credit to get the audiobook of Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, because unfortunately, I'm not really loving this. I'm liking it well enough, and when I am reading it, it's like I am enjoying the story, but I think I could love this so much more if the story around Margaret was a lot smaller. I think the setup of this book is really cool, but unfortunately, the literary romance element of Emily Henry's work is better for me when the focus of the literary part is around one of the two main characters in the romance, because then I feel like it makes sense that you're building out these characters who are the main focus of the romance. This one, where it's very much an external person, just feels really, I don't know, I'm just having a really hard time with it. It doesn't feel like it balances being a literary story of Margaret's famous life and a romance, because along with that, I also see pretty insta-lovey. I think Alice and Hayden are cute. I definitely enjoy their banter, and some of their interactions do have me swooning, but they're like already dropping L-bombs, and I don't feel that. I do not feel that at all. Yeah, this isn't going nearly as well as I would have hoped being an Emily Henry book, honestly, which I'm very sad about. And because I've been working through this so slow physically, that's kind of why I just decided to bite the bullet and get the audiobook so I can officially finish it out, and at the very least, I'll knock a book off my TBR. I am still marking in the audiobook places where I want to tab, because I love Emily Henry's writing itself. It's so good to me. It is so consumable, but like the story here isn't winning me over nearly as much as her other stuff has. But my plans for the rest of the night are to finish reading this audibly while I cook dinner, and then I'm gonna try and really hunker down on reading A Touch of Steel, because I'm pretty engaged with that book right now. Like, that romance is actually doing pretty freaking well. We've had some jealousy getting set out on both sides, and I am always here for that, even though in Beck's perspective especially, he's like, this is not my woman. I have no claim over her, but you need to leave her alone. It amuses me to no end. I also think I have probably put together the big twist that's gonna happen in this book. I don't know if I would necessarily like bet $5 on it, but I'd bet 3. I'd bet $3 on this. Good morning, friends. We are on day 2 of this challenge. I was just shy of 800 pages last night. Did not top 1,000, but I'm very proud of that. That is a good chunk in. So I officially finished out Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry last night, and I actually did it on audio, which is surprising. I don't think I've listened to a single one of her books on audio since I read Beach Read for the very first time, because usually I love her books so much that I end up wanting to annotate them and I want to read them physically. And though I did have a few tabs more when I was listening to the audio, just the end of this book really reinforced to me this one is the least romance of all of her work. All of her stuff I very much believe is like literary romance, and I like it for that. But this one, it really feels like she did not strike a solid balance between the romance and the literary story. An ongoing complaint I've had throughout reading this book is that I felt like having this story around Margaret where it's external to the main characters, both the hero and heroine characters unfortunately suffered a little bit. Honestly, like, not so much Alice. I think Alice was actually a pretty solid character, but Hayden's character definitely suffered. If we were instead focused on something that was relating to one of the main characters, I think I would have been more invested with that. Without getting into spoilers, that's slightly acknowledged, I'll put it that way, in the end of this book, but like, I don't think it worked at the same time. Like, I still don't feel like it really accomplished what I wanted. Third act conflict, it's one of those where it makes sense. I totally get it. But I think the way the characters handled the whole situation was so overdramatic and so overblown, and if they had just like taken a breath and had an actual conversation, it could have been completely avoided. I did really like the bits about Alice's character at the end of the book though, kind of her healing moments after the third act conflict. I don't love the epilogue chapter that happens in this one. It feels like one of those that falls into a trap that a lot of romances do that I just don't personally care for. In the end, basically, I liked this. I don't think it needed to be nearly as long as it was. I felt like there were some good reveals and twists in the story. I enjoyed Alice's character, and there were some moments in the romance that just had that like Emily Henry goodness. But overall, this is probably my least favorite of her stuff, honestly. And then I read some more of A Touch of Steel last night, and I actually hit about the 60% mark, meaning I think I read around 170 pages yesterday of that. Already have continued reading it this morning, continuing to really enjoy
enjoy it. I went ahead and filmed a ARC reading vlog update for it so that I can hopefully maybe finish that on my lunch break today, because I'm just having a really good time with it. It's a really fun time. Overall, I'm really enjoying the characters. The romance is so good. I feel like the chemistry between them is just delicious. The jealousy elements that are being brought up, they're ridiculous and they're utilized in a fun way. They don't seem like they're over the top and creating unnecessary drama. And then this morning, I have started into the audiobook of The Folklore of Forever by Sarah Hogle officially. I love Sarah Hogle. She is one of my favorite romance authors. She does like quintessential rom-coms and just has a direct line to my funny bone. And pretty immediately, we already are like jumping into the romance here. So we are following Zelda, the middle child, I believe, of these sisters. And she, along with her siblings, for a long time believed that they were witches. They grew up in their grandmother's like apothecary shop, a candle shop, not an apothecary shop. Apothecary Diaries is just on my mind apparently. And Zelda is the writer of the family. She has written a paranormal like mystery series that did quite well, but now she is unfortunately experiencing writer's block. She is just kind of stuck trying to figure out what she wants to do next. But now she has unfortunately fallen out of love with this whole witch thing. She just doesn't really believe it. She isn't sold on it anymore. And I'm wondering if like part of the story is going to be her finding the magic of this town again. The first book isn't actual magical realism or fantasy, but there's a touch of it where certain things will happen and it's like, it could be depending on how you read it. Overall, it just had a really whimsical feel, but still had Sarah Hogle's like rom-com fun with like some deep character moments. And I'm really hoping to see more of that with this one and Zelda's character. So far, it already seems like she's really feeling like the odd one out in her family. And unfortunately, her family's not intending to make that worse, but they kind of are. And then our hero character, I believe, is Morgan, who we've already seen. They actually went to high school together, and he's like I think he's a journalist or maybe a podcaster, something like that. And he has wanted to interview her a few times, but she keeps shooting him down because she's terrified of the question of like, what are you doing next? But he's also like flirting it up with her, and so that's been a lot of fun. But now they're pseudo aunt, she was like a frenemy to their grandma, has come into the shop to say that they're going to be putting on this festival, and she wants the two single sisters to be a part of this dating auction. I don't know if that's going to be an important element of the story or not, because I didn't really look too much up about what this story actually is, apart from that it was continuing the series and it was Sarah Hogle. But I am rip-roaring ready to go for a fun time. I can't wait to keep reading this. That's what I got. Tonight I'm going to my brother's, so we'll see what I managed to get read. Chances are we'll be watching some Bad Batch when my niece and nephew are still awake, and then when they go to bed, I'm forcing my brother and sister-in-law to watch Murderbot with me. That will officially be my fourth time watching the 2 episodes that are currently out. I fully expected this to become a comfort show for me. It's not even fully out yet, and it's a comfort show for me already. That's impressive. Good morning, friends. Unfortunately, I've taken way more time than I would like today having to film updates because my microphone decided to be a bit of a punk and mess with the audio the first time around. So I'm having to go through and refilm everything while I have time. That being said, though, continue reading Bat Eater last night and into this morning. I've hit the halfway point now, and I'm really liking this. It just feels like an encapsulation of everything I enjoy in horror. I mean, we've got grief horror, character exploration of Cora. It has that whole, is it paranormal, is it not thing going? And then there's some grander discussions of society at this point. And I'm really liking this. It's so good. Also very well done gory writing. Baker's writing is phenomenal. I'm loving this. Like, I understand why everybody is loving this as well. Apart from that, I did finish out A Touch of Steel last night. So that was another one that is knocked off the list. And I think my page count last night was right around 1,500. So honestly, we're not doing too bad. I think we're hanging in there pretty well. Going into day 3, obviously I am going to continue reading Bat Eater. I think I'm going to try and work on a manga on my lunch break when I can, so I can get in a few more pages. And then the next ebook I will be reading is Miss Thornfield's Daring Bargain by Addie Dulac. This is another author who will be attending the Buns N' Roses romance tea, which, if I haven't talked about in this video yet, is a romance tea event that is open to the public and goes towards a nonprofit in the Dallas area, the Richardson Adult Literacy Center. So if you're from the area and intrigued by this, I will put information for that in the description down below. I am once again trying to read a book from every author who will be attending this year and going to, utilize this challenge to work on that. So this one is a historical romance that I believe is actually following a woman who is Chinese. I remember it's Friends to Lovers, and I think it may have Marriage of Convenience, but that's all I can really remember off the top of my head. But it's not too long. I got the ebook of it. I have my book club tonight, so unfortunately I once again have plans this evening, meaning losing some reading time. And as I said, I'm already losing reading time because I've had to go through and refilm all these updates. We're just gonna keep trucking along. We're doing our best.
Good morning, friends. Happy day 4 of this challenge. I am running late, and then I have a work event after work today. So I don't know if I'm gonna have the energy or time to really film an update this afternoon, but I've been doing really well at filming at least one update a day with this challenge so far, and I wanna keep that ball rolling. Here I am to talk to you as I am driving to work. Unfortunately, I did not get nearly as much read yesterday. It was just a busier day overall, had more phone calls, had more work stuff that I really needed brain capacity to focus on. And then, as I said, I did have my romance book club last night, which is always a lot of fun. But, obviously my focus is on the book club and like taking in recommendations and talking about my books and, interacting with people, not on reading. I did actually end up finishing out Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. And I really liked this. I said yesterday, this has like everything I enjoy in a horror book put together. And the way the book ends also kind of has that. It's one of those things where I think it needs to be utilized sparingly. Like, not every book can pull out this sort of a twist. I actually really like how it was utilized here. Then, because I finished that one out, I went ahead and started into the audiobook of Tears of the Nameless by George Mann, which is my next Star Wars novel. Back to the High Republic section. I did realize pretty quickly that when I described this book in like my TBRs and stuff, I kept saying that the Nameless were the sentient plant aliens. That was wrong. That is the Drangir, actually. The Nameless are these beast-like things that actually feed on the Force. And so we saw them in the earlier High Republic series, the section that took place like 100 years prior. They're once again being utilized by the bad guys. And we're basically alternating around watching different people, how they're just continuing to try and battle the Nihil, but also battling this blight. The blight is basically just taking over pieces of land, and it eats and disintegrates anything it touches. But so far, I've at least started into that. I'm about 5 hours in. I will have to stop at the halfway point for it, so I guess I'll just pick up a different audiobook whenever that happens. I haven't figured out what that audiobook is going to be yet. That's for future Nat, if she manages to hit the halfway point today. I don't know what my work day is going to look like either. Along with that one, I also started into my next ebook, which is another historical romance. And already this has started pretty well. You can tell this was setting up a series. So we are following Adelaide, who is half Chinese. And at the start of the book, we kind of see her bonding and making friends with these 2 other women who are living in British high society, but also are minorities. And so, of course, at their boarding school, all 3 of them are experiencing prejudice, and they end up kind of forming their own little clique and becoming best friends. And now we have a little bit of a time jump into the future. Adelaide's brother has just been kidnapped. And so she is trying to figure out what's going on, but also, like, she's a lady in the society. She can't really do jack. Brother's best friend, Basil, who is the alternate perspective, also is trying to figure out what is happening. Barely started into this, but I do like that it's a brother's best friend. I do tend to enjoy that trope, depending on how it's utilized. But given the fact that they're going to have to work together to figure out what happened to her brother, I'm into that. I can be all over that mystery. On that note, have a good day. Good morning, friends. Happy day 5 of this challenge, and we have officially surpassed 2,000 pages. Yesterday was not nearly as productive as I wanted it to be. So starting at the top, I did hit the halfway point in 2 tiers of the nameless. I need to film an update for that. I'll probably be doing that here shortly, but I'm liking this well enough. I do feel like it's still a little bit all over the place. So once I hit the halfway point in that, I kind of bounced back and forth on like what I wanted to pick up next, because I didn't want to pick up another sci-fi book. I looked at the list of possibilities I had, and I figured, why not try out I don't remember if it's the Full Moon Book Club pick or if it was for Jan's layer buddy read, but it was The Memory Police, and this has been on my TBR for a while, so I figured, why not? I'll go ahead and try it out. I think I got about 100 pages in and I was bored. It's this dystopian island where people live. Every time something will be like outlawed, it is essentially removed from memory, except there's this one guy who actually does remember things, and he's a fugitive basically. But it felt like we weren't really getting nearly as much about the memory police and kind of the impact this has on their society as I was really wanting. This has been going on for so long that the people of this island are just very used to it. And so we're watching as these characters do their best to continue living their lives with the memory police being there. So like, for example, our main character's father was an ornithologist, but when they like outlawed birds, and literally everything that her father had to do with birds is outlawed. So they had to come in and take all of it. And like, I wanted more exploration around that and like how this works in the grand scheme of their society. I guess I wanted more of like how they came to reach this point where it's just so normal. We got little pieces of it, but just the focus again is very much more on the after of them so used to this. It's an inconvenience, but like apart from that, they don't really worry about it too much, and just how they're living their normal lives. I wasn't really interested. I was getting bored with it. So I ended up putting that one down. So then I went back and forth again on what I wanted to pick up on audio. And I was like, I'm feeling a thriller. I read The Butcher by Jennifer Hillier, I think last month, and I really enjoyed it. I really ended up blasting through. So I was hoping I'd find something similar to that again. And I ended up picking up My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. This has been on my TBR since like I first got on booktube, so I figured this is finally the time for me to get this read. And I always heard this had some really good twists in it. It was such a fun ride. Disagree. I did not even make it 100 pages into this one before DNFing it, because I felt like we had one or two little reveals and I pretty immediately could figure out where the story was going to be going. What were some of the twists the story was going to be taking, the reveals that we're going to have. I just figured it out so fast, and I didn't care enough about this unnamed main character who is also kind of terrible to watch everything play out. I had very similar feelings while reading this that I did to B.A. Paris's books, where it's like the story itself is not shocking, but the ride is supposed to be fun. But I don't care enough about the characters to enjoy the ride, because this unnamed husband character is also kind of the worst. So yeah, I didn't even get 100 pages into that. And once I had DNF'd that one, it was like the end of the workday. And then afterwards, we had a client event last night at a baseball game. So my time was pretty dedicated to that for the rest of the evening. I did read tiniest bit more in Miss Thornfield's Daring Bargain, and I am liking the setup of that so far, but I haven't really had as much time to eyeball read the last day. Today, it's Friday. I have dropped off my car for some work. I have to do actual work, unfortunately, but I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of filming done so I can continue reading Tears of the Nameless at the very least, and hopefully finish that book out and it won't be a DNF. And then I can kind of go from there and possibly pick up my next sci-fi book. And hopefully that'll go better for me. Maybe sticking to the TBR I already have established is what I need to do right now. I'm also hoping to try and get some manga reading in today, because that's a good way to get pages quickly. Niece's birthday party is Saturday morning. We're hanging out with Josh's parents, I think Saturday night. And then we were throwing around trying to go to the Renaissance Fair one last time. Again, I chose a terrible time to try and do this challenge, but I am really just hanging in there and doing my best. That's all I can really hope for. Hello, my friends. So we're not doing nearly as hot as I would like to be on this challenge, and it's also been a few days since I've talked to you, so I have a lot of books to actually give you updates about. Currently, as it stands, I'm
just shy of 4,000 pages. And we are 7 days into this challenge. 10,000, definitely not happening. I really need to do this when like I have the ability to take some time off work. I think that would be really useful. But my life is so freaking busy that I don't know when that's gonna happen. But let's go back to reading updates. Finally got some manga read. So I read volume 6 of Library Wars. And honestly, this was fine. Like, I don't feel as though there was anything super impactful to the plot or the romance in this one overall. If anything, it builds out a side character a little bit. And then unfortunately, there is more of the nauseating side romance, which I really do not like. So this was fine. I officially finished out Tears of the Nameless by George Mann. I think this did better in the second half of the book than the first half, but like this also did a twist that I think this author hasn't done before, but other authors in the Star Wars universe have. And it just doesn't have the same impact anymore because I've seen it numerous times at this point. I think if that twist had been completely removed, a perspective could have actually been completely removed and it would have shortened the book overall, which is like not a great critique to have in my opinion. And then I also read volume 7. This one I liked more because we do actually get some expansion on the plot around what's going on in the library. And now, unfortunately, our main character has been implicated in something that may possibly be a problem. And so with that, we're seeing some expansion on the plot. Plus, the lead male character is, of course, trying his best to protect her, but also he can't protect her. And so he's doing everything he can to help her with this situation. So I'm really enjoying that. Do still wish these two would not be so physically violent towards one another. Not a big fan of that. And then one of the bonus chapters once again returned to the icky side romance, and I could have done without. Apart from those, I also have binged through the entirety of 𝗖cie by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. And I really enjoyed this, even though, funnily enough, I had the same problem with this one that I did with Tears of the Nameless, which is the authors utilize a twist and reveal that they have done in the last 2 books. If you keep repeating that, it's not going to have the same impact. So I did not care when that happened. I knew they were going to do something to change things, just like they have done previously. But overall, I was talking about this series to Josh, and I think I actually kind of came up with the perfect comparison. These are like watching a bunch of James Bond movies. The storylines feel pretty rinse repeat, but you have such a fun time with it and you get invested into the characters that like you don't really care that much. You just have a good time enjoying it. That's basically what happened here. Speaking of Josh, on Saturday we ended up driving out to visit his parents, which is a bit of a drive, and then on Sunday we went to the Renaissance Fair for the last weekend, which is also a bit of a drive. So I found a short horror book that I knew he would enjoy listening to with me, and so we ended up reading the entirety of 𝗖cie by Delilah S. Dawson. This was on my TBR, especially when I heard people sell it as The Menu meets Ready or Not, 2 horror movies I very much enjoyed. And honestly, a perfect description. Like, I don't think I need to tell you anything else. Following a woman who wants to get in with this big name fashion magazine. So she starts dating said woman's terrible son and ends up going on a little like Easter vacation with him and his family. Shit hits the fan. This was a lot of fun. It had some really gruesome kills. It was satisfying and disgusting and unsettling. Amazing. Like, I really enjoyed this. I need to read more from this author. Turns out, I found out when looking at her backlist, Dawson actually writes numerous Star Wars books. So that's hilarious. I will be reading more of her stuff at some point. Final one. I have officially finished out Miss Thornfield's Daring Bargain by Addie Dulac. I didn't love it. Unfortunately, I actually got pretty bored with this. It started strong, but once the actual plot got laid out, a passing glance makes sense. Further scrutiny doesn't make a lot of sense. In fact, the longer the story goes on, it makes less and less sense. And then the romance is so insta-lovey. Don't really mind the age gap here too much, but I didn't love that the female character Ada was incredibly naive when it came to all things romance and sex. There's elements of the story that I think are solid, and I'm intrigued to try something else out by this author because I do love that she's trying to utilize BIPOC characters in historical romances, but unfortunately this just didn't really work for me. Good morning, friends. I took a day off. I ended up taking Memorial Day off basically because for one, I was wiped out from the Ren Fair the day before, and two, I just had so much stuff around the house that I needed to do that I couldn't really do while listening to an audiobook. I basically read nothing. And we're just gonna call that a skip day. So I continued on with this on Tuesday and ended up reading the entirety of the Stardust Grail by 𝗖cienih and really liked this. I think Veronica Roth on the cover here really encapsulated the story. It is a Indiana-style space heist adventure, and I really enjoyed it. I probably could have loved it if there was a romance tossed in because there's a few little like nods to something, but it's not explicitly showcased. And while I don't absolutely need my stories to have a romance, I think it would have just provided that little bit of something extra to make me love this book. But I did still very much enjoy it, and it was a really fun ride overall. And then after that, I ended up starting into the next book for my Star Wars novels this month, which is Tempest Breaker by Cavan Scott. And this is actually a prime book for one of these challenges because the physical book is nearly 600 pages. The audiobook is only 6 hours because it is an audio drama actually, and it is a full cast, full production. It is so good. I'm really loving it. Lorna is a character that I've just had so much fun with, and I've been looking forward to seeing more of her, especially because we, in the prior, I guess, book of this like little duology, specifically following Lorna, we see her background, we see kind of how she came to be where she is, and then we see her on the run from the Jedi. In this one, she has cleared her name, though is still technically a criminal, and is actually working for the Jedi. Hopefully, maybe get a pardon. I love Lorna. I think she has grown a little bit from the first book. Like not, I don't want to say she's like matured, but she almost is coming across a little bit more empathetic at times. She doesn't seem quite so heartless and cold and scaly. I don't know why that was the term I went with there, but it was. So I'm about 70% into it. I will hopefully be finishing that one out today. And then apart from that, I also have picked up the ebook of Slippery Creatures by KJ Charles. I went to start this for a different project a while back. I don't know, I think I got a chapter into it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna restart this and see if it works. KJ Charles is very much known for their queer historical mystery stories. And this one's no different. It's following Will, who has recently inherited his uncle's resell bookshop, which we love that sort of a setting. But apparently his uncle was mixed up into something that was kind of shady and has some sensitive information that both a gang and also the War Office wants. And now Will is kind of stuck in the middle of this, even though he has no idea what this information is. He ends up meeting Kim, who comes in to try and be a patron and helps him out with a scuffle numerous times. And Will kind of like gets a little bit of a vibe there. And so now there's something building between them. But at the same time, Will is a former soldier. I don't know what to call this like time. It's like the early 1900s, but I think before World War I at this point. He fought during the Russian Revolution, I want to say, because Kim was a Bolshevik. And so that was kind of like a big no-no at the time in Britain society. Sort of butt heads over that, but like also explain their principles and their philosophies and like where their mindsets are. And so like I think they have come to a better understanding at this point. Yeah, this is like a time period of history I'm not super familiar with. So like that's been very educational as well as the story has been interesting. I'm not like absolutely in love with it or anything, but it's interesting enough to keep my attention anytime I pick up the ebook. I hopefully will maybe read some manga today. I want to try and start into my nonfiction book if I can, because we're nearing the end of this challenge. But I'm working from home. I have a hair appointment this afternoon, which I tend to get some reading time in during that. I have no clue what my numbers are right now. I'm nervous to look. Hello, my friends. So I was already filming updates and figured why not just go ahead and do another one. It is actually the same day, shockingly. I'm once again talking to you twice in one day, but I finished out Tempest Breaker. Loved it, unsurprisingly. Had a lot of fun. And then I ended up starting into my next audiobook, which was Mickey 7. This is by somebody or other. It is the final book of Galactathon for me, probably. Picked this one up off of the movie came out and everybody started talking about it. Got me intrigued, and so far I am liking it. I'm still very much in the world building section right now, getting introduced to Mickey and like how this all works and like why he's even on this planet in the first place and being made to, you know, go on these dangerous missions and have copies of himself made. It's been entertaining. I read exactly 2 pages of Dracula today for my pages on May 28th. I have read a bit more into Slippery Creatures. I am continuing to enjoy that, but I did actually call a big twist of the story fairly early on. And so it has me really curious as to if Charles is going to make me convinced by a apology from the love interest character Kim, because he's definitely on my shit list right now. The writing style is interesting because at times it feels like Charles is almost trying to come across like this is very much written in the 1900s, but at other times it does have some more modern takes. Every once in a while it starts to just be a little too much for me and I find myself skimming. For once, I shockingly actually have some reading time tonight. I can't believe it. It feels like forever since that's happened. So I am going to read the next volume of Library Wars, volume 8. Good morning, friends. So I think last time I talked to y'all, I mentioned starting into 𝗖cie 𝗁𝗁. And so now I have finished that. I liked it overall. It very much felt like following a character dealing with an unusual set of circumstances in this sci-fi world, but apart from that, it seemed very slice of life. I mean, granted, like the slice of life is pretty unusual because of where they're staying, because of the circumstances Mickey is living in as this expendable person. Honestly, it felt like the plot had a hard time gaining any momentum to really go anywhere. It was interesting enough to keep my attention, and I liked Mickey as a character. I enjoyed watching his relationships with certain characters play out. I finished this book and it was very much like, okay, like that was a good time. I'm glad I read it, but there is actually a sequel and I do not feel any push to pick up the sequel. I very much don't think this story needed to be continued on. I also realized I actually forgot to talk to y'all about something that I read midway through 𝗖cie 𝗁𝗁, which is Library Wars Volume 8. I mentioned I was going to pick this one up and I actually really enjoyed it because we finally see some actual development around the romance. There's been this ongoing thing with Kasahara of how she has this guy that's her Prince Charming, but she doesn't actually know who he is because she met him when she was in high school because of this situation with the governing body trying to censor a book that she loved, and he stepped in to protect her. She has finally figured out who the prince is. So that's been a lot of fun to just see how Kasahara is handling this news and how it's already starting to alter their relationship. But at the same time, there is some more expansion around a side romance, which I really don't like. We are starting to get hints to another side romance, which I enjoy more, with Tezuka, her partner. And I'm definitely here for him because he's like a grumpy asshole character and those are always my favorite. But so I read this one, continued on with it, enjoyed it. After I finished 𝗖cie 𝗁𝗁, I was at work and needed to start into a different audiobook. And I figured, you know what? Do like two birds, one stone. So I started into the book for my Quick to Judge challenge, The Dead House. That vlog should already be up, so I'll put a link to that in the cards up above. That'll have in-depth thoughts about the book. But so far, I'm liking it. It's this YA horror story that's told in a multimedia format, meaning the book itself moves pretty quickly, but there are more pages in it, like 𝗖cie, which is great for this challenge. I didn't want to get too far in before I was going to need to film an update for that vlog, so I only got, I don't know, like 25%, I think roughly about 100 pages in. And I'm liking the setup. It's already pretty interesting because we're following this woman, Carly, who has a dissociative identity disorder, and her alter, Caitlin, only comes out at night. Then I had to hit a stopping point for a vlog, so I started into the next book I had, which was Love at First Sight by Jennifer Dugan. And guys, I'm gonna say this book felt like watching a sitcom story because there is so much lack of communication and silly inconveniences to continue the plot on that it feels like something that is close enough to real life that you can enjoy it, but it is also not real life. Like, this is pretty unrealistic in the amount of lying and covering up and hiding that these characters do from one another. It's ridiculous, but I could not stop reading it. I was so engrossed. So in this one, we follow Lizzie, who works at a gym. Her best friend is the owner's son, and he ends up inviting her to go along with him to his perfect sister's wedding. And while at the wedding, she can kind of try to sell herself to his parents, who she believes don't like her, in order to maybe go for a promotion because she really wants to eventually own her own gym. But while there, she ends up running into a girl who's crying in the bathroom, gives her this huge pep talk. Come to find out, that is the bride. And the next day, the bride has run away and left the groom at the altar. That would be Kara. And Kara and James have had a very complicated relationship, which we dive into, and I really like that. Kara and her parents have just as complicated a relationship as James has with their parents. But all the while, Lizzie gets stuck in the middle of this family drama, and she has plenty of her own issues she is working through in this. Really liked that. As I said, it's ridiculous. I am not going to give this a 5-star, but I could not stop reading it. I continued listening to the audiobook for the rest of the day. I listened to it as I drove over to my brother's, and then I downloaded the ebook so I could keep reading when I had little moments, and ended up finishing it on ebook there. Once I finished this, read a little bit more of The Dead House, continued liking that. And then I did also read a little bit into Intertwining by Fran Drescher. This is a memoir from when she was on The Nanny. So it's like right at the height of her popularity in the 90s. And I'm really enjoying it already. I'm reading this physically, but even still, her voice is just in my brain. It is Fran reading it to me, and I love it. It's been really interesting learning about her background. There are some things that do feel like very 90s in this so far. It's also interesting reading this, knowing certain things I do about her life after the 90s, because in this, she and her husband Peter are still married, and it seems as though they are still very much in love, still have this great healthy relationship. But obviously now we know they have since divorced because Peter has come out as gay. But even still, like, they do have a very healthy relationship from everything I've heard. So like, I'm glad to see they still love each other as much as they did here, just maybe not necessarily romantically. It's also interesting just to hear like some of the other famous people she's known. Like, she's known David Caruso from CSI Miami for so freaking long in her working career. There's a chapter about Warren Beatty in here, which was kind of interesting and very much played into Carly Simon's song. I'll say that. There's a time or two where things do get a little heavier. She's talked about some sadder moments in her life or some more difficult ones, but overall, it just feels very fun. It really does feel like I am sitting down to coffee and Fran is just telling me these ridiculous stories about different parts of her life. Like, every chapter is completely different, a completely new ride, and I'm loving it. It's so fun. I'm really enjoying it. Final book, and very ironically in line with Love at First Set that I have finished since last talking to you, Slippery Creatures by KJ Charles. That was the ebook I'd been working on. Officially finished that one out. And I liked it. I think the mystery that was built out was solid. Charles did have some twists thrown in there that I didn't expect, but there were some that seemed kind of obvious. And then I did start to get really frustrated with the fact that the love interest character continuously keeps lying to Will, the main character. And I know this is a trilogy that continues following these two characters, and I imagine like by the end of the series, they have their happily ever after. But I did not feel positively about Kim or a romance between these two at the end of this book to want to read more of their story. It just felt like he constantly was stepping all over the trust Will was putting in him, and I did not appreciate that. I didn't like it. Unlike in Love at First Set, where there's lying and hiding of information and miscommunication, and that one it's played in this comedic way where like they always have good intentions. They're doing this to result in like the positive outcome for both of them, but it comes about because they have to lie to one another. And I don't love lying in my romance stories, but it felt so much worse here. Will would call Kim out on it, and then Kim would do it again and again and again. And it never felt like it was actually to benefit Will. It never felt like it was to benefit their relationship. It was always to benefit Kim and his situation. I finished it. I had a good enough time, but like, I'm not going to continue the series. Hey y'all, so for some reason, I just have like an aversion to closing out long-running videos apparently, because I went to edit this and once again I do not have an exit. So let me tell you all about the last few books I finished and also, you know, started on in that last day of the challenge. Plus, let's go over a few of my stats for the entirety of this video. Starting at the top, I did officially finish out The Dead House by John Kurdagich. And as I think I've mentioned previously, I already have a dedicated video talking about this book, so I'll put a link to that in the cards. Unfortunately, I didn't really love how this ended. I finished it at the very least. Throughout the day, I did read a little bit more into Intertwining by Fran Drescher and did continue to really enjoy this book. I've since finished it now and can tell you I had a phenomenal time. It was a lot of fun and just very much feels like Fran Drescher telling you random vignettes about her life. Barely started into A Lady Sparks a Flame by Elizabeth Everett. I think it was maybe 2 hours into this when I officially finished out the video. I will have a full review of that one coming out later this month. Really enjoyed it. It was off to a very strong start, especially like from the beginning when there's the trigger warning that the author wrote in here. I knew immediately she was going to be a very well-spoken, poignant writer, and she definitely delivered on that. This like is a perfect recommendation for the girlies who love feminist books, but you want historical. Finally, I ended up closing out this challenge with Library of Wars Volume 9. And I continued to really enjoy this. It took a little bit of a turn. We had this like big reveal in volume 8, and this is kind of watching that reveal play out and seeing how it's changing the relationship some of the characters have. It's nothing too drastic just yet, but we are also starting to see a setup for a side relationship with Kashihara's partner, Tezuka, and then her roommate. And I'm actually all over that because both of them are kind of like, I hate everyone, but you're cool. And I'm into it. So that is it for everything I read in this challenge. I did not hit 10,000 pages, obviously. I'm not terribly surprised. I need to try and do this when I have nothing going on, but I have no idea when that will ever happen in my life because I'm way too busy for it. Even still, at the very least, I completed the little minimum goal I had set for myself of reading more than I did last year when I tried this previously. I ended up reading to completion 18 books. I read a portion of 5 other books. I read about 81 pages of fan fiction, and I actually ended up finishing out 5 different videos. All in all, even though I did not hit 10,000 pages, I would still very much call this challenge a success. Will I do this again? Probably, but I think I'm starting to realize maybe I need to change this challenge to being like hit 10,000 pages in a month. That actually seems more doable for me. Still, I had a lot of fun with it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching along. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me the 100 emoji in the comments. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked to the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!